Welcome back to Get Paid for Your Pad today with the one and only Mr. Eric Moeller. He hasn't been on the podcast for 6 months, so welcome back, Eric.
Thanks for allowing me back in, Jasper. It's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah. I'm excited to get an update from you, and I'm sure the listeners are excited as well. There's a lot going on behind the scenes of Freewyld, and I know that's been your main focus for the last 6 months. So we have a lot of updates for everybody. We have some announcements, some exciting stuff that we're working on that we're going to announce to the audience today. So yeah, why don't you give us a quick update? Like, what have you been focused on for the last 6 months?
Oh man, where do we start? Oh man, we have so much happening. In the last 6 months, yeah, I mean everything from the real estate that we have going on in Idlewild, that we can talk about like how well the current cabins are doing in that marketplace. And that's been a big focus of ours right recently is really just understanding like our level of hospitality and marketing and pricing and just everything that goes into operating the cabins alongside our brand. Really just kind of testing that, and it's been a great result the last 6 months since we've been live. People are loving it. Guests are loving it. They're loving wild mode. You can touch on the revenue side, but the revenue has just been incredible to see up there, and our properties have quickly become some of the top performing listings in the marketplace, which is very exciting. And then along with that, we've been working on phase 2 of the property as well, which we have this week. We have our first approval call with the building department, so we're going to find out what we can actually build up there, which has been a huge it's so funny, man. Like when I talk to real estate developers and hospitality developers around the country, when they hear that we're building in California, it's always like, they feel our pain because trying to do anything in California just takes a long time, construction wise. But we're finally there, and we're going to find out in the next few weeks what we can build there. And the goal is to get about another 15 cabins. So we can break all that down, but we've had a lot, man. We've had a lot from the performance of the current cabins to the development of phase 2, hiring new team members, raising money, and then kicking off some new services under the brand as well. So it's been a busy 6 months without a doubt.
Yeah. I can't believe we're almost halfway through 2024. It's just so crazy. Like every year seems to go faster.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's freaking nuts.
But yeah, just to kind of give a recap, for if there's any new listeners, like we bought this property in Idlewild actually in September 2021, and we started renovations last year in March, and we relaunched the property with 4 cabins in October officially under the Freewyld brand. So our first real Freewyld property, and it's been pretty awesome. Like it's so much more fun to operate a Freewyld than operate the old cabins as they were. That was just not as exciting, and like it was a different energy. Right now we have a team where we're all focused on really optimizing and putting the bar like super high and delivering a world-class experience, whether it's for the guests, whether it's the pricing, the revenue management side, the guest experience. Like everything is just so much more dialed in, and it's more fun. It's more fun to work that way. And we'll share some results about the revenue that we're generating and everything. But why don't you touch a little bit on the guest experience, because we've been crushing it. Like all of 4 cabins are now guest favorite, which is amazing. April was our first month where we had 100% 5-star reviews. I think that we had like 46 check-ins, and we didn't get a single non-5-star review, which is amazing. And hopefully soon enough we'll be in that top 10, top 5% category where you get the golden accolades around the guest favorite badge. That would be really amazing.
Yeah.
But why did you touch on the customer experience? Like how, what are some learning lessons from the relaunch on that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I really wanted to focus on when it comes to the guest experience was really living true to the brand that we were developing. And look, majority of our bookings are coming in through Airbnb right now. We have a nice steady direct booking business that's coming in that we're focused on growing for sure. But it's always a tricky task going from an Airbnb guest to bringing them through and connecting them to the brand that we have around the properties, right? I think Airbnb guests are just kind of used to checking into regular Airbnbs, and they look at the properties as an Airbnb, not as a Freewyld, right?
Mhm.
So for me, that was one of the first things that we wanted to handle was like, how do we get a random guest that finds our property and it's branded as Freewyld to really connect with the brand when they're at the property. So obviously, the standards are always there as far as like turnover with our teams that are on the ground, right? Making sure that that is dialed in as a machine and that they're well trained and supported to deliver the same product over and over again. And that was the first major hurdle that we focused on. And then the second was, okay, when a guest books to the moment that they leave, how do we make them feel like they are the only guest in the world that matters to us at the moment, right? And it's like, regardless of how many guests that we're taking care of, we wanted to really over deliver on the customer service side. So we put a lot of personality into the communication with the guests, the solving of problems and how we solve the problems as they come up. So and the way that we communicate with our guests, we're communicating to them as if they're like our guests staying at our guest home at our house, right? Like we're welcoming them into our properties. So we have quite a bit that is automated through our technology and all of that, but implementing unreasonable hospitality to truly connect with the guests was something that we've been focused on over the last 6 months, and it's been amazing. We've had a couple of challenges that have come up with running older properties, like plumbing and electrical issues, and items that we have on the listing site that have gone missing that we didn't catch during the turnover. And it's all about how we, with unreasonable hospitality in mind, how we're approaching it and solving those problems. It's been freaking awesome to see how well they've been received, and
Mhm.
regardless of how bad the problem is, as we're approaching it through the brand of Freewyld, leading with unreasonable hospitality, we're getting incredible results with the guests feeling like they are being well taken care of, and we see it. They're coming back. They're rebooking. We just had a guest who stayed at one of our cabins, absolutely loved the experience, and immediately booked 2 other cabins in a few months from now to bring all his friends. And now he just hit us up saying like, hey, I want to book for Christmas and bring all my family in the other cabins. And we're starting to get that where guests are now connecting with the brand and they're excited and they're texting us separately about their trip and just like as if they're texting a friend. And that's really cool. It's really awesome. And it's something that for the Freewyld brand is really important to us. So yeah, I think leading with unreasonable hospitality and like the brand identity has had a incredible impact
Mhm.
on the way that this property is performing.
Yeah. Yeah. What's really cool to see in the reviews is that a lot of people have mentioned like things like, oh, this is the best Airbnb I've ever stayed at, or it's like the best place I've ever stayed at. We're getting some really incredible feedback.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk a little bit more because one thing that's unique to our brand is that the fact that we're inspiring people to disconnect from devices, right, and spend quality time without technology. So playing board games or having conversations, music, all of that. How do you feel that people are really connecting with that side? Because I think that it takes a while to really like create that culture and brand, right? Like, do you feel people are connecting with it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if this weekend we were getting some messages from guests asking specifically about, and these are Airbnb guests, right? asking specifically about the Wild Box, which is for the listeners, the box that that we put in each cabin that inspires people to lock away their cell phones. And then we have different things in that box, from Polaroid cameras to games to conversation cards, all of this curated between our team to curate a special experience for our guests. And yeah, we're getting a lot of amazing reviews on that. We're getting, to the point where people are now taking wild mode home with them and implementing it at home with their kids or with their partners, and sharing that with us offline, which is amazing. So it's not every single Airbnb guest, because what we recognize is, like, obviously, until we really get the brand recognition to a point where they're connecting with wild mode and they're seeking us to disconnect, there is this point of education where we have to bring them through the journey to teach them about, like, hey, you're at a Freewyld. That means that you should enter into wild mode and disconnect a bit. So yeah, we're bringing them. The guests love it. We educate them through the welcome sequences and different touch points throughout the property and their stay. And as of right now, the guests are absolutely loving it, which is amazing, and this is the whole point of the brand, is to help more people disconnect from technology while on vacation and connect with the things that are most important, right? Of, like, being in this amazing place, being in this amazing space, connecting with the people that they're with, and just, like, connecting with nature while they're up there. So, yeah, I love that. And I'm excited to go deeper into that with the technology that we're going to be introducing into our future properties as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've definitely noticed that, like, there's some of the messages where people are saying, like, hey, this wild mode sounds really cool. Like, I'm going to tell my friends about it and things like that. So, but I think it takes time, right, to really, like, build that. And it's cool to hear that, we're getting some people who are literally coming back with their friends and with their family because they want to share that experience that they had with their friends and family, right? And eventually, yeah, it'd be cool if people start saying, hey, I'm staying at a Freewyld this weekend instead of, like, I'm staying at an Airbnb, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be pretty amazing.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah, it's an ambitious goal, but we'll get there. Let's talk about Freewyld Foundry. So this is something that is new that we haven't spoken about on the podcast. We haven't really announced this to our community yet, but we've rolled out a number of different services that we're offering through the brand of Freewyld, aside of acquiring these old school vacation rental properties and turning them into modern short-term rental experiences. We're now doing a number of other things. So why don't you explain, like, what's behind Freewyld Foundry?
Yeah, I mean, look, any entrepreneur knows this. Any real estate entrepreneur knows this, that, like, buying real estate, designing real estate, developing real estate, and getting real estate cash flowing is a patient game to be a part of, right? Like, we're moving as fast as we can to buy new properties and develop new properties. But, buying real estate, unless you've been in the industry for a long time and you have the machine going, it takes a while to ramp up. And as we are building out phase 2 in Idlewild, and we're negotiating a few more purchases right now in a couple of different states, and we're raising money for the real estate equity side, and we're talking to different investors. Like, this is a long-term patient game that we're playing on that side. Through that, we've been developing out a lot of different skill sets and services within Freewyld that we are now starting to offer to the market, starting to offer to other operators in the space, right? So over the last 6 months, we've also been building this incredible team, and we hired our first full-time team member, Kay, who's leading up marketing and branding for the company, and we're in negotiations to bring on a few other team members. Through this process, we recognize that we have a really awesome opportunity to bring what we're doing really, really well in Freewyld as a service to a select few clients in the market space. So we launched Freewyld Foundry, which is a service brand underneath Freewyld that focuses on three main services. Number one is what we're calling the partner program. That's where we're partnering with real estate developers and landowners that already own property that align with an asset that aligns with the Freewyld brand, where we come in and we act as the flagship property and the operating arm of that specific property. So think of the Marriott model in that way, right? So we see that as a way to expand our business pretty quickly without having to buy the properties ourselves. Number two is branding and marketing. So we've been working with a handful of boutique hotels all throughout the country, helping them develop out their branding and their messaging and their unique identity the same way that we did with Freewyld. And it's been freaking awesome what we're doing there. We're working on 3 hotels right now, 2 in California and 1 in Arizona. And then third is what we're calling RPM, which you, Mr. Jasper, are leading up and bringing the most value in that space. It's called revenue and pricing management. So through this, and we should chat about like the success that we've had with Freewyld. But yeah, the RPM program is really us stepping in as a extension of a operator's team to run 100% of revenue management for them. And we have 6 clients there, right? How many listings total? About 200?
Yeah, 200-ish, yeah.
Yeah, 200-ish listings all throughout the country. And, the results that we're getting are pretty nuts, right? So we're seeing revenue increasing by 10 to 20% for these operators. And, these are bigger operators, right? People that are running 30 to 200 listings, 150 listings-ish. So yeah, the Freewyld Foundry is really our way to bring our skill sets and what we do extremely well under Freewyld as we're raising money and building out our larger locations. We're now leveraging our skill sets as services for a select few of clients in the market space.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I mean, my focus right now is mainly RPM. I'm really trying to like cut everything else out because I just love this revenue management thing. It's so much fun to manage these portfolios. And I think it's like the idea, it's crazy. Like we've only been doing this for, what is it, about 6 months or so, but it just feels like we've been doing it for so long. But I think the initial idea came just from looking at the results that we're getting, the initial results that we're getting for Freewyld, right? Where we saw like some of our units are doing like double RevPAR compared to the top of the market of similar listings, right? With our studio, Black Mountain. And we realized we're like, wow, the having a daily focus on revenue management and really understanding the data and looking at every day, looking at market data, looking at what bookings are coming in and really like adjusting, and focusing on revenue management on a daily basis just gave us such big results for Freewyld that we realized, hey, you know what? This is value that we can add to other people's businesses, right? And we learned that a lot of operators don't have that daily focus and don't really know what data to look at and how to drive decisions in their revenue management. So yeah, it's been pretty awesome, and we can go a little deeper into what the service is and how people can get involved.
Yeah, well, let's chat about the results that we're getting, and I'm curious, like. And I'm sure people would be curious too what we've been learning about revenue management, because to me this is, I've been preaching to the short-term rental world that hospitality brands was the future of short-term rentals, right? I started talking about that early COVID days of saying like, the future of short-term rentals is a hospitality brand that guests can connect with. And you see that now, like fast forward a few years, like all these new hospitality brands in the short-term rental space are popping up, and everyone's trying to develop this like new experiential based unique style brands. They're not identifying anymore as just Airbnb companies. Everyone has some type of hospitality brand to them, right? And now what I see is the future of successful short-term rental companies is like the next biggest opportunity is for companies to really dial in revenue management. Because I think what I did all the way up until we started doing this for Freewyld, what I see everybody from our students to the biggest companies in the space, unless they're in a position where they have funding to hire out big revenue and build out revenue management departments in their companies, for the most part, 99% of short-term rental operators, and specifically that mid-tier operator that's like running $1 million to $10 million worth of revenue, they have a pricing tool. They have one person, usually the owner of the company, that goes in and presses a couple of buttons. They have some type of strategy in that pricing tool, but they have no idea what they're actually doing in there, and there's no real strategy to it, right? Like I think 90% of the companies that we've spoken to are in that position. 10% have some idea what they're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making those stats up, but that's kind of what my gut is telling me. So I feel like, I mean, do you agree with that? Like, I feel like the biggest opportunity in short-term rentals right now, cash opportunity, is really defining revenue management in your business. So like, what have you learned by, working with these companies and seeing like the difference between like the students that we used to work with and now, our clients, like, Hyro and their companies and the results that you're getting. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And, I think the market has changed so much, right? Where a couple of years ago, like in 2021, 2022, you could get away with the set it and forget it mentality when it comes to revenue management, because there was just so much demand that, and we see this in every single of the clients that we work with now. We look at their revenue history and we see like, hey, 2021, 2022, they were doing great. And, there was no need necessarily for people to really start diving into the revenue management side, because they were making so much money. It was more important to just get more properties, just get as much as possible on Airbnb and on other channels, because it's just bringing in so much cash. But then 2023 is when everything started to change. I'm sure everybody who's listening can attest to that. 2023, it changed, and 2024 is kind of an extension of 2023, where now with the added inventory, like all that money that people were making attracted so much supply, and now that demand is not there anymore. And so now we have to really compete, and we have to stand out, and we have to literally, everything has to be dialed in, from the marketing, from the guest experience, and the revenue management. This is something that a lot of operators, I think, have overlooked. And right now, like you just can't get away with just the set it and forget it mentality of like looking at your price lapse or wheelhouse like once or twice a week and making a couple of adjustments. It just, it's just not working anymore. And we see that. I see that for all of our clients. I literally see it in the data. You're going to be left out if you continue to have that mindset when it comes to revenue management.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we started talking about in the beginning of the year, and what we recognize, it's like, unless like someone needs to be, if you're a short-term rental operator, regardless of size, but especially professional property management, arbitrage or ownership, like if you have multiple listings, you have to have someone who's obsessed with revenue management in the business. Right? You need somebody who is in there daily. Jasper, are you with me?
Yep. Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right, you're
freezing up a little
side.
bit, but it's all good.
All right,
so
cool.
It's cold. It's cold. So
Yeah. Yeah, you need somebody in the business that's obsessed with revenue management and who truly understands how to manage the entire process and is in there on a daily basis. Right? Like to your point, like the set it and forget it thing. I mean, we've been talking about this for years, but specifically for revenue management, it's a whole new game now. And what I've also found is like most people, they again, what I said is like they have a pricing tool and they have somewhat of a strategy, an idea that they're doing, and they're in there once or twice, and if a property's not booking, they just drop the price, right? That's not a strategy, right? You don't, if you're trying to sell a product and it's not selling the way that you want it to, you don't just go and slash prices, right? Because like that doesn't help you sell the product, and that doesn't help you grow the company, because you're taking money away from the company. You got to figure out the demand. You got to figure out where customers are coming from. There's got to be a strategy to attract people to your product, and pricing it in a way that's going to attract them, but then also knowing what's coming down the line, right? To adjust it quickly based on demand that could be 2 or 3 days down the road, right? There's such a different play that I now see, like the huge value of this. And let's talk about the results for Freewyld, and then we can talk about RPM clients. Like that was your realization. Like we're raising millions of dollars for these properties. We have investors that are putting pressure on us to perform at high levels. And, we're asking ourselves is like, how do we, okay, the brand looks good, the listings look great, but how do we stand out? And like, how do we maximize revenue here? And you recognize like, hey, we need to own this, and we need to have some type of strategy in place. And it's been 6+ months that we've been running that now. And yes, we have great operations. Yes, our properties are beautifully designed. But one thing that I've noticed with the way that we're running the properties now is like we have a lot. I mean, last month alone, we're having a lot of turnover on these properties, and our revenue is through the roof. And why don't you talk on that a little bit of like the realizations that you found by running Freewyld, and the results that we're getting, maybe RevPAR wise, revenue wise, the whole thing, and just kind of be an open book around that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd say one of the biggest realizations is that you have to do a lot of trial and error and experiment, and to really understand the market, right? Because we have a lot of data to look at. But it's like now that I manage 6 different portfolios, I realize every market is a little different, and all the properties are a little different. And you don't really know how much revenue you can generate until you try to really focus on maximizing it and seeing like, hey, how much can I price that weekend at? Can I price it at 500 or 400 or 300? What are people willing to pay, right? It's a big learning curve. Like it's a huge learning curve. It's revenue management it's not like there's this one strategy that's going to maximize, every portfolio and every market. It's every day new information becomes available, right? Because every single booking has information. And that's what the biggest thing I learned is like, you have to really look at it every single day to learn, because I've learned so much about the market Idlewild in the last 6 months, right? And I see that on the portfolios that we're managing now as well, is like there's such a learning curve. And when I was at the revenue management conference back in Nashville that you were at as well, one thing one of the most well-known revenue managers in our industry told me, he said, revenue management is more of an art than a science, and I remember him saying that, and I was like, well, I don't know, like, because there's, it's a numbers game, right? We have data, it's strategy, it's analytical. But now looking back, I realized like, yes, that's true. It really is more of an art, because there's just so many unknowns and so many uncertainties, and it's so dynamic. Like it constantly changes, right? So that's why it's impossible to have a set it and forget it strategy. That can never be optimal, because it constantly is changing. So we have to constantly adjust as well. So, I'd say that's probably the biggest realization I had. And what really excites me is, because I'm managing different portfolios in different markets, and there are different type of markets, right? There's a beach market, there's a a lake market, there's a mountain market, there's city markets, right? And those are all like very different. And it's really cool to see that, like, when I implement a certain strategy in one portfolio and I see that it works, to then use that and implement it in other portfolios as well and see what the results are, right? So yeah, I mean, I've really fallen in love with this process. It's just so much, it's so much fun for me. But it's a, it's a very long learning curve. And that's why I think, to your point, you were saying, every company should have somebody who's focused on revenue management, whether it's you do it yourself, you hire a service like ours, or you hire a full-time revenue manager. If you're going to do it yourself, like, you have to love it.
Yeah, let's touch on that real quick. Let's touch on that real quick. And I do want to go deeper into like the actual numbers that we're getting result wise on Freewyld and maybe one of our clients. But just to touch on that real quick, because we talk to a lot of companies that have, 20 listings, 30 listings, 100 listings, 200 listings. And if they don't have a revenue management person in place, it's typically the owner of the company or one of the owners of the company that's in their pricing tool, just clicking around and doing some things, and they feel like it's a strategy, but it's not really going somewhere. And yes, those are the directions. It's either you become the revenue management expert in your business, you hire a salary revenue management expert in your company, or you hire a service. You can't do this list it and forget it thing anymore, right? So let's break that down. Like, for you to become a revenue management expert, you got to be as obsessed and excited about that process as you are, Jasper, for Freewyld. That's how we got to this whole place, because like, you love the art of revenue management, right? And you took it on, and now we're taking on other people's portfolios doing this. So for the people that are listening, like, if this isn't a part of the business that excites you, like for me, I'm not the person. I'm not the guy. I'm not the guy that's going to be in setting all this stuff up. Like, I understand it. I'm excited about the results of it, but to sit down and implement the way that you implement, that's not my thing, right? I know where my strengths are and what excites me. So for the owners of the companies that are listening to this, it's like, if you're not that person, you got to quickly find either the service or the person to do it for you. And then you have to act as the CEO to lead that service or that person. Because the other thing, like, hiring a revenue manager in-house is very challenging, because you have to, as like a team member, it's rare to find somebody who has the knowledge of the short-term rental industry that knows how to create a revenue management strategy at a high level, right? It's very, very difficult to find that person. And when you do, they're very expensive, because they're at a high demand, right? They have lots of options. And then the service side, and this is why we wanted to roll out RPM as a service to the industry, is because, like, we looked at all the other services, and they're good for what they do, but there's a level of old school approach that I'm noticing for a lot of the services that are out there. Like, they do one or two things that are really good, but they are managing a lot of portfolios, and they don't go into depth for it. And what I see is a lot of business owners, operators who hire these services, they go in with the same mindset of set it and forget it. They hire the service, and then they just kind of let them do their thing, right? So my advice to that is, regardless of who you hire, if you hire RPM or anybody else that offers a revenue management service, you have to act as the CEO to lead those companies to get the results that you're looking for, which is a lot easier for operators and business owners to do, because you're doing that anyway with all your other team members, right? You don't have to be the expert there, but you do have to hold the standards and shoot for the goals. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick, because there are different options out there. And I think if companies do this correctly, the amount of lift that they can see on revenue is incredible, right? Like,
Mhm.
let's talk about that real quick as far as like what we're seeing for clients, right? Like we go in there with a very specific, the only clients that we take on are clients that we feel pretty damn confident that we can have a pretty awesome growth on their revenue, right? And it's typically not us, like our clients aren't investing into their properties, painting walls, doing new, marketing or doing anything different other than passing the baton of revenue management to us. And then we're seeing this incredible growth. So why don't you talk about that? Feel free to use like an example or just
Yeah.
overall, like what are the results that you're seeing with us taking over the revenue management? Like money sitting
Yeah.
on the table.
No, and I think that's an important philosophy that we have. Like, we don't go in with the mindset of like we're taking over the work and we're just kind of delivering whatever performance that was already there. Like, our goal is to make it a win-win where the client makes more money even after paying for our fee, right? And that's exciting to me because then like everybody makes more money, right? And so far, like we're hitting that for every single client that we work with, and that's exciting, right? I mean, I can give an example of Gyro, who is actually going to be on the podcast in the next episode. So we'll share a lot of details around his business, but we were able now to raise his revenue literally like 35% compared to before we started managing for him. And that's huge.
Wow.
That's huge.
Massive.
Our goal is like 10, 20. But obviously, like we're not going to say like, hey, we got to 20, and so we're going to stop and just keep it at 20. Obviously, we want to raise it as much as we can, and it's possible. Like it's definitely possible when you go from set it and forget it to active management that we do. And one thing I should point out as well is like we don't just do the pricing and everything in Price Labs and setting the prices. We also consult on the other departments because other departments drive the revenue as well, right? So we need to have the marketing dialed in. We need to have certain operational aspects dialed in, right? We need to have distribution. Every part of the business essentially feeds into the revenue management. So that's something that's important, where when I'm on a weekly call with my clients, I do during the week, I do all the work, but then also on those calls, I tell them like, hey, there's an opportunity here to improve your marketing. There's an opportunity here to improve your operations, right? Gyro, for example, his team didn't have the ability to, for example, to leave a review for every single guest and respond to every single review and have all the listings being updated on a weekly basis, which is very, very important. So we helped him to hire a virtual assistant, and now he's very happy with that because he's even less work to do. But also now with the virtual assistants, like we can do all the things that he wasn't doing before we started working together, right? And I met him in Miami last weekend, or for last week, and that for 35% increase in his revenue, it's a huge difference for his business, because he does the master leasing. And when we started working with him, like he wasn't very profitable. Like we reviewed his P&L for 2023, and there was really no profit left at all, right? So you can imagine that if you're putting in $1 million and you're spending $1 million, then your profit is zero. Now you add 35% to that $1 million, because that revenue is going to go right into your pocket, right? Now you're making a $350K profit. That's a huge difference, right? It's
That's
just
insane.
massive, and
that's insane.
Yeah,
and think of like what most operate, and this is why I see this being one of the biggest opportunities for professional operators right now, is to really own revenue management. Is Gyro, everyone will hear his story, so we'll save the details, but like he's a professional operator. Like he's a smart man. He runs, he has another very successful company. He knows how to run companies, does a great job at what he's doing. But just by approaching revenue management the same way that most people approach revenue management, he was leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars of profit on the table, right? And just think of the amount of work that, and this is why I saw this as such an aha for me as an operator, of like saying like, oh, okay, like this, we got to take super serious, is like the amount of work most operators to earn that extra $350,000 in their mind, I have to go out and get more properties, right? Which is so like such a labor intensive, high risk approach to making that type of money, where most of these operators like Hyro that are, you know, mid-level operators that are, you know, running, let's just say dollar wise, $1 million to $10-15 million worth of bookings. They're leaving that much money on there just by ignoring revenue management or approaching revenue management in an old school way, right? So that's what I freaking love about that, man. Like $350,000 is a lot of money to come back as profit to a company for not having to reinvest or bring on more listings into your business. Now, just imagine as he starts scaling and adding more listings to his property, to his portfolio, and already having the RPM strategy in place, like immediately he's maximizing revenue on these listings. We don't have to go through that discovery phase anymore, right? So it's incredible. I really like, man, I said it back in the day. Like, it's funny. I look back at like what you and I have preached to the industry. It hasn't been a lot. It's been like the same message for the most part. But the first step was like, okay, you got to build systems, right? We can't keep approaching business this way. We got to invest into systems. And that's where Legends X came from. And then it's like, okay, well, we got to build a hospitality brand. That's the future of short-term rentals. And now 2-3 years later, we see that everywhere as like one of the most popular things. This is my next prediction, is like revenue management is the next biggest profit vehicle in your business, is developing a real revenue management strategy. I think that's like your branding needs to be dialed in. Your customer service needs to be world-class. You have to solve a very specific challenge for a very specific traveler, and you have to focus on your revenue management. Either hire somebody or become an expert within your own business.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And one thing that I realized through working with Hyro, because, you know, he's looking at onboarding new buildings, right? So what he does master leasing. So, right. So there's all these buildings, and he looks at like, okay, how much do I have to pay to rent this building? And how much can I make on the Airbnb, right? He's now looking to onboard a new building that before we started working together, the numbers didn't make sense, right? But now that he's increased his revenue, now suddenly that building does make sense, right? Because 35%, that's the difference between, okay, we're not going to make any money on this building, or we are going to make money on this building, right? So that's what's really cool as well, like saving him time, so he has more time to go out and find these properties, but also because his revenue is so much higher now, a lot of more buildings make sense for him to add to his portfolio.
Yeah.
So it's a double 100%. Whammy. It's a double whammy.
Man, it's amazing. And then, you know, he's now taking that profit and reinvesting into his existing listings, which are now becoming more desirable and earning more money. So it's like, it's an incredible flywheel for a business, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think that's one of our biggest predictions moving forward, is like, and suggestions to everybody, is to like really master this within their business.
Yeah, 100%. But you have to, it's such an intense process that like you have to love it. You know, if you're not loving it, then, I mean, I guess that's probably true for everything, right? I think that's one thing that you and I have learned over the last few years is we really got to just focus on like what we do best and what we love doing, because everything else just takes away from that, right? So
100%.
So yeah, I think that's one of the big, most important messages that we can bring, you know, to the listeners today is like, make sure that if you want to still be around in 3 or 5 years, like you have to find a solution for the revenue management side. Either you love it and you do it and you spend the time on it, you have to learn it first. We have a course for that too. Or you have to hire a service or hire a full-time in-house.
Yeah. And for anyone who wants more info on this stuff too, on how we, you know, how our service works, you guys could check that out at Freewyld, Freewyld, foundry.com/RPM. And we put up a page so you'll be able to kind of read through our process, the whole thing. And then to be clear, our service isn't for everybody. It's really for companies that are in between that $1 and $10 million range. And also focused on scale, looking to grow. And we found like our service really, really works extremely well for the rental arbitrage companies and owner operators. Still works for property managers without a doubt, but those two company models impacts it the most because 100% of that money goes back to the owners, right? Which is
Exactly.
the business owner. So
Yeah.
if you guys want more info on that, check out freewildfoundry.com/RPM. Man, to wrap this up, any other takeaways or anything that you want to share on Freewyld itself that you've learned through the revenue management side?
No, I mean, I think the biggest thing is what I mentioned. Like, it's just such a learning curve, and everything's constantly changing. So we have to really focus we have to look at every single booking. Another thing I learned is like, people are willing to pay a lot of money for the right type of experience. Our Black Mountain studio, just that thing has just completely blown my mind. The results that we're getting there.
Yeah, and just for the listeners on that, because I think we're going to be talking about that unit quite a bit in coming podcasts and on our social media and all that. So if you guys want to see that unit, go to freewyld.com/Black Mountain, and you'll be able to see the actual cabin that we're talking about. But that cabin is like, I mean, talk about the results on that and like what's happening. I mean, it's a beautiful cabin, beautifully designed, has awesome views of the mountains and trees, hot tub. It's got a fireplace. Like, it's a perfect designed type of cabin and size for that area. But then putting the RPM strategy on top of that has really, the results have been incredible. So yeah, what are we seeing there as far as that one cabin?
Yeah, so I have the numbers in front of me here. All right, so we're talking about a studio in Idlewild, right? The average studio in Idlewild makes about $24,000 a year. The best performing studio outside of ours makes about 37,000. Now, our studio is projected in 2024 to make 72.
Wow.
So that is
wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so to put that in perspective, that's like almost double what the next best studio generates as far as the data that we collect, right, through AirD Price Labs and all of that. So that's pretty amazing. That has really blown my mind. Like, I didn't think it was possible to get to that level. I mean, our RevPAR on that studio so far this year is just over $200, where the average market RevPAR is like 75. So that's like, it's more than 2.5x. Which, that, and to your point, like when you have like a really high end experience like that, the higher end experience will, the more money you can make by leveraging the right strategy when it comes to the revenue management side.
Look, man, and this is the thing, like, it's not much more work building Freewyld than what I did in the past with building our arbitrage and management company. It's like, it's not that much more work to focus on a brand and a story and design and a specific asset and all, like, it's right around the same amount of labor that goes into creating that. But the results are so much bigger because of the intention that's put into every single aspect of this company. Right. And like, we put so much intention into the brand and the story, and so much into the way that we market, the way that we tell that story through the design of the properties, through customer service, unreasonable hospitality. And now with RPM on top of that, like, we're figuring out how to maximize revenue on a beautiful property. It's like everyone has access to this. Everyone can do that, and everyone can create something that's unique to them, right? Which is so exciting. And it's like you just have to make a decision. And this is where I see a lot of operators that we're talking to. Some operators, like maybe you can have Sergio on here one day to talk about his success. But like, certain operators, Sergio is a perfect example of like that mindset of like, oh yeah, I know this is my weakness. I don't want to do this. I believe that you guys can drive these results. I want to hold you to those results. Now here's the baton, go run with it. Right. And it's like, okay, that was easy. And we're getting awesome results from that. And then we talk to other operators that are so controlled, that hectic host model, right? Of like, I have to be in control of doing this, and I'm so afraid of movement. That's where the stalemate really comes in people's businesses. So I really do encourage everyone who's like listening to this, if you're a professional operator looking to grow, you got to either develop the skill set of revenue management, and we can support on that. We have, we have a program called Cashflow Mastery. Getpaidforyourpad.com/cashflow mastery that can help people in that side. And then of course we have RPM that can support you on for the bigger companies, but they have to really own that part of their business, because the moment that we can start matching brand and story and marketing and amazing customer service with a real revenue management strategy, you quickly become the top performing company in your marketplace, and it becomes very difficult to compete with you, because most companies are missing most of those elements in a company, specifically revenue management. So yeah, I think, dude, I think the people that take this on are just they're gonna realize a lot of money that's been sitting there.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what's so fun to do this. I love making people more money because everyone's happy.
Exactly. Dude, 72,000 for Black Mountain. That's incredible.
I know, it's so crazy. Awesome, man. Well, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
That's it, man. Appreciate you having me back on here. We'll jump back on and give some updates on what's happening with the development in a couple of weeks. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
We get an offer accepted on a cabin hotel that I've been negotiating for the last 4+ months. So hopefully next time I come on here, we have our second property. And then if anybody wants to find out more what we're doing on the service side, just check out freewildfoundry.com.
That's right, freewildfoundry.com. And then /RPM if you're interested in the revenue management and you're doing, we're being pretty selective with the people that we work with, but feel free to apply. And with that said, that's it for today. I'm sure we'll have Eric on in the next couple months. Bless you. He's kind of dying right now, but
I'm joking. Sorry, guys.
All good. He's still alive?
I'm back.
Yes.
Sorry.
He's still okay. Woo! Don't worry, everybody. He's still alive. Alive and kicking. Yeah, we'll do some more podcasts because we have so much going on, and I feel like right now Freewild's just the hockey stick. The hockey stick thing where it's like, it's about to explode. I know. Yeah, I have that feeling.
Pretty crazy, man. Yeah, we didn't even scratch the surface on what we're doing. I mean, the conversations we're having with investors are just so freaking exciting. We got some investor commitments, over $3 million on our next purchase, which is really awesome. 100% of our development has been committed to. Hiring some really amazing people. It's awesome to see what's happening. So excited to be a part of it. So we'll jump back on, and that's it, y'all. Appreciate you having me on, Jasper.
Alrighty. Yeah, thanks for jumping on, and to the listeners, hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll definitely do a few more podcasts in the near future. So with that said, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Adios.